Minecraft 1.0 came out 14 years ago in 2011, and if you Google for builds made back then, none of them are very good. Everybody pretty much just built wooden rectangles. Since then, so many new blocks have been added to the game though, but also people have learned a ton of building techniques which nobody knew back then. And so today I want to go all the way back to Minecraft 1.0 to see how cool of a house I can build, considering I've built hundreds of houses in my 12 years of playing the game. That's a depressing amount of time. I want to see if it's actually possible to build something that looks impressive, even to today's standards. Anyway, let me close Minecraft and reopen it back 14 years ago. So I think if we go to installations, we should be able to select the oldest version, which should be 1.0.0. And let's just give this a name, and then we should be able to install it. And there we go. And let's just make a single player world. And we can't even make it super flat. There's no settings for that, but we can turn structures off and make it creative mode. And there doesn't seem to be any other settings, but let's just make the world. I think I started playing around 1.3. So this is relatively nostalgic, but this is older than when I started playing. But the terrain generation doesn't look as bad as I was expecting it to look. In fact, over here looks like the perfect spot for us to build something. Yeah, right by where all these sheep are, I think would be really cool to like build a house or something. You can't even type in chat, so I don't know how I meant to like turn off the day cycle, assuming that this version has that. But I guess we'll just have to deal with it if it starts raining or something. But looking at the blocks, there isn't much we can use to build with. There's no search bar, which I think is going to become really annoying, but the most problematic thing is that there's barely any blocks. The menu looks relatively full, but the entire last section of this menu is just items and armor. These are the only blocks that we actually have to work with up here, which is basically nothing. I think I'm just gonna go for like a classic medieval kind of house, as that's what I'm most comfortable with building, and we'll just see how alike it can look to builds that would be made nowadays. So let's start by building a base with some stone bricks maybe. I wouldn't mind using some gravel so we can try out this old texture that it used to have. And I wouldn't mind mixing in some ores as well, because I like to build with ores quite a lot. I think the only issue is that the texture looks quite different in this version, so it might not blend as nicely, but we'll give it a go. And the sensitivity of this version is already throwing me off. Hopefully I get used to it the more I build. Now I don't want to build anything too big because there's no tools in this version like World did it. So I'm going to have to place every single block by hand, which definitely isn't ideal. Especially with the sensitivity just feeling so off. And another thing that's already starting to irritate me is the fact that you can't sprint while you're flying. So anytime I want to look back at how my progress is coming along, it's going to take me a lot longer to do. I don't think I've ever seen any builds in this version that actually look good, so I'm interested to see where this is going to start going wrong. Ooh. Oh, that's already throwing me off completely. You can't place stairs to face downwards, they have to face upwards, which is going to really make this difficult. I guess we'll just try and use slabs here instead. Oh, you also can't place slabs on the top. They can only go on the bottom. That's so annoying. I feel like there's going to be loads of small issues like this as we go, which I just didn't remember were in this version. But I'm already starting to understand now why old builds looked so bad. See, in my head, the only issue with older versions was that people weren't used to building yet, so builds just didn't look as good. Plus, obviously, there not being as many blocks. Like, andesite would be perfect for this. But I guess there'll just be loads of technical limitations, which sucks, but oh well. But let's just add some ores as well, just to add a bit of nice contrast. I'm already starting to get a bit worried about how this house is going to look. And then let's just fill in the rest of the walls with cobblestone, I think. So let's have a look. I think this size should be okay. My current idea is that I'll make a base for it, and then I'll make like a second floor, and then maybe a third floor on a roof. So quite a basic medieval looking house I think would be fine, but let's try and add a bit more dimension as it's quite flat down here. We can probably just use stone bricks again, and some stairs like that, and just do that along every wall. Yeah, I think that should look quite good. We can even jut them out a bit more, I think, just to add a tiny bit more dimension. I think that later on we might have some issues with adding dimensions, so I want to add as many layers as we can at the bottom. When I looked back at some images of like 1.0 houses, I noticed the main issue they all had is that they were very, very flat. And also very like one note in the blocks, because people didn't used to experiment as much with blocks. That's why I'm trying to really mix in a bunch of different blocks as we go. Because I haven't really seen any builds in 1.0 that have loads of different blocks mixed in. Normally people just use like cobblestone and sand. I'd love to add some walls on here, like cobblestone walls, but there are no walls in this version, which is really annoying. I guess we're just gonna have to leave it, as I don't want to use fences, as I don't really think any of the types they have would fit. But let's just finish up by maybe adding some windows in as well. We can use iron bars for these if there are any. Let's have a look. I don't know if they're... Oh, there they are. Oh. There we go. I think these would work fine as windows. Normally, I wouldn't use iron bars for windows. I think I want to save the glass panes for when we get a bit higher up, as I'm pretty sure that they don't have different colors of glass in this version, and I don't want to make it too one note, so this should look fine. And it's starting to get dark, but like I said, I have no clue how I would disable daylight cycle. I'm pretty sure there's just no way to, so I'm just gonna have to leave it. So apologies if this video gets a bit dark later on. But for now, I wanna try and make some kind of windowsill for this, so that it's not so flat. But I don't know if this version has that many blocks I could use. I could use trapdoors, but I want to save that, I think, for the main part of the building. I could try and do something with rails maybe, but I don't know what I could do. I might just experiment around with this for a little bit. You can't even... I was thinking maybe I could have like floating rails on some string. You can't even place string in this version. I'm just trying to find some kind of glitch or something that could work for this, but I don't really think there is much. I do kind of like how that looks actually though. As like a window frame and then just a bit of a ledge on the top. I think that could work. Yeah, something like that could work well for the windows. I might just copy this onto all the sides and then see how it looks. I don't think you could do this in newer versions, as the fence and the iron bars, I'm pretty sure would just merge and connect and not look very good. So I've just copied that around to all of the sides, and I think it works quite nicely. But I might just finish up by adding some buttons as like an extra detail as well. I want to add as much detail as I can, as like I said, that's what older builds seem to be missing, or at least compared to newer builds. Especially at nighttime, you can barely recognize these are on here, but from far away, it should just add a bit of extra detail. Let's start moving up though to the next layer. To start with, I'm going to want to find a block that I can put behind the slabs. And I'm thinking it could be fun to use like a lesser used block. Maybe something like note blocks could look quite cool. They're actually a block that I use still in like modern Minecraft for adding a bit of extra texture. As if you look at it from over here, they actually look quite nice. Yeah, I think that could look quite good. And then let's add our wooden frame. I'm just noticing now that there's no spruce wood, but there are spruce logs. So, wait, let me see. If I craft these into planks, am I just gonna get oak wood? Yeah, so there's no spruce wood planks in this version, which sucks, as normally I'd use oak logs and then spruce wood, as it works quite well together, but I guess we're just gonna have to go with oak wood. So let's just make a bit of a frame. And you can't place these facing the other way, they always have to face upwards, which is not useful at all. I really didn't think through any of these issues when I came up with the idea for this video. And then let's just bring it out by one more block, just to once again add a bit more depth. Does look a bit odd how they're all facing upwards, but that's the best we can do. I just keep opening the menu to try and look for spruce, but that's really annoying. Let's just build up a frame though with these. I'm literally just gonna build this how I would build a house in like a newer version of Minecraft. Just fix it up wherever I need to, but try and use the same basic shaping and like block choices. Maybe soul sand could mix in quite well with the oak logs. I think that's quite a nice contrast. So we could try maybe replacing some of the logs with this. Yeah, I think that would look quite nice. There's no way that I'm going to be able to actually like use a good gradient for this build, just with the lack of blocks in the game. Using some gradients where I can, I think is good. Just there won't be that many of them. But now that we have this level built in, I'm just going to quickly frame out the next level too, I think, just so that we can get an idea of the shaping that we're going for. I need to start thinking ahead of what blocks I'm going to use where, because there really aren't that many to pick from. I want to use a block for the roof that I haven't used anywhere else, and there aren't that many blocks left, so maybe nether bricks for the roof, and I can maybe use brick slabs to just help with some detailing. So let's quickly grab some bricks, and I'm just going to go around and outline this layer with the bricks, and then we can... Nope, we can't, never mind. I was gonna say we can add a layer of the slabs around the top here, but we can't. And then because I can't place slabs around here, I'm gonna place some stairs. And they're not gonna do the corner connecting, are they? We can just use a slab, I guess. This is making me realize just how much I take newer features for granted. You can't even select blocks by middle clicking. Let me get this again. Maybe we use spruce for the next layer. I wouldn't mind messing with some spruce. In fact, we could probably do a gradient like that. That could work. So I'm just gonna remove that for now, but mark out where we want the roof to continue upwards. I don't think I'd normally build a house to be this tall, but I really want to try and stretch the limits as much as I can. But now that we have this shaping, I'm just going to start filling it in, and then we can make some adjustments to it once we see what it looks like. But there aren't really many blocks to choose from with filling it in. I'm probably just going to have to go with wooden planks and just oak because they only have oak. Maybe crafting tables could work, and we can use fences, some gates, some ladders. Yeah, that's pretty much all that we have to work with. Maybe some dirt could work, to be fair. It's not the most ideal block, but we can probably try and use some dirt, I think. I think it actually blends in quite nicely. So let's just fill this in with dirt then, I guess. And I'm gonna, normally I'd go a layer in, but because of this ugly texture of the log that couldn't be sideways, I'm just gonna make it quite flat. And then we could probably use some oak like that. And then if we just fill this in with, let's go with some glass panes. Seeing as I was saving these for the main walls. Are there any trapdoors? Hopefully there's trapdoors. Okay, good. There we go. So you can't place it. How do you? So you have to place them on full blocks. I can't place them on the stairs. So I'm gonna have to put a full block there and then we can add our trapdoor. A technique I remember that people would use is ladders as shutters. And I think I'm gonna just do that. So I'm just going to replicate that kind of design onto all of the walls. I make some adjustments for these narrow ones as well. So let me quickly just build all of these out. Yeah, that looks pretty cool now that there's a whole set of them. I actually quite like how this is looking. Like, it's obviously not the best build, but like for 1.0, I think it looks pretty nice. And I think for these smaller bits, I might actually make a bit of a cool design where it like hangs out a bit if I can. So let's, I can't place it the other way around. This is annoying me so much. It's starting to get dark again. But let's just place some logs and just make this small kind of bit that juts out over here. Then I don't want to do too much, but I want to have a bit of a roof that comes out in front. And I don't want to do much roof work yet because we'll do the roof at the end, but I'm thinking we'll use nether bricks for it. There's no nether brick slabs, so I probably shouldn't use nether bricks. Unless I just use stairs, I guess. I might change this later on, but for now, this will just have to do. I think that actually looks quite nice. It's quite Victorian having this darker palette part of it. And then let's maybe do some brick slabs. Never mind, we can't do slabs under it. I'd love to hide this texture, but you can't place any slabs here as they'll just go down to the bottom. Are there any blocks I could use to cover it up that aren't full blocks? I guess trapdoors, maybe. Never mind, I can't use trapdoors to do that because they go down too. No, I'm just gonna have to leave that texture, I think. Then let's have a big window here. Probably just use glass panes and keep it simple. Like that. Yeah, I think that looks pretty nice. Let's copy this design now to the other side really quickly, which might take a minute. I probably should have done both at the same time so that I don't forget what I've done. But I think that looks the same as the other side. Hopefully I didn't get it wrong. The only thing missing is that. I think now they look the same. But the other spot I have to work on is this spot over here. I think I'm going to do the same with having a darker color scheme and just having it go up a bit as well. I liked how that looked over there. Yeah, I think if this bit juts out about that size, it should look quite nice. You can even round this window off even more, having it be this kind of shape. Maybe instead of glass panes, we could use full glass as well on this one, just to add a bit more contrast. Like that. Yeah, I quite like that. In fact, we can put some panes on the side as well, which just add a bit more shape, and I think that looks pretty nice. I don't think I'd use some of these techniques in modern Minecraft, but because there's less blocks to work with, I'm just using as many techniques as I can. Now, I'd love to round this roof off, but because of the stairs not connecting, and because there's no nether brick slabs, I don't think I'd be able to. So I'm just gonna keep the roof just a regular shape. And then lastly for this side, I've just remembered we're gonna have to redo it on the other side. But lastly for this side, I just wanna add some more nether brick fences and just use them for a bit of shaping on the roof. So let's just replicate this now on the other side. I really wish that I had welded it right now. And I think that that's the same as the other side, maybe, hopefully. It should be similar enough though, at least. But with that in place, let's now fill in all of these walls. And then my plan, right now at least, is we'll fill in these and then we'll have the roof on top with maybe a few bits that stick out. And then we can work on other details. Before I build upwards though, I wouldn't mind trying to add a tiny bit of nether brick, like some small spikes or something into the walls down here, just to help the bits that we just made blend in a bit better, as right now they feel a bit out of place. But some small details like that, I think, would just help to even out the build a bit. Okay, I think that's pretty much all of the walls. I also wouldn't mind maybe adding some flowers, but I don't think there are many flowers in this version. What flowers are there? Are there any? Yeah, so it's just roses and flower. That's a great name for a flower. I think these are dandelions now, if I'm correct, but we could maybe try and put some of these around the build. I don't think there's even flower pots in this version. So if we do want to add any flowers, we'll have to add some grass blocks. We can maybe add them on either side of the windows, just to add a bit of framing, and then let's add some trapdoors. This is a very old design that I remember everyone using, and I might switch it out to dandelions, just because I think the red blends a bit too much with all the brown. That could just be because I'm colorblind, but I think the yellow stands out a lot nicer. So let's just do that on the other side, over here. Oops. I think these two parts so far look good, but once we add this layer, the whole thing should come together quite nicely. And what I've just realized, I could probably use a bed, right, to skip the night. I don't know why I didn't think of this. Where are beds? Are there beds? Okay, good. Yeah, I should be able to skip the night. There we go. I was really worried for a second that that wasn't in 1.0. I'm assuming I'm just gonna have to use oak planks again, which I don't really want to do again. I'd like some variation, but I don't want to use a different block just for the sake of using a different block. I could try out some dirt again, maybe, and just see how it looks. I could use netherrack, but I think the texture is just really ugly in this version. Yeah, I really hate the look of that. It looks a lot more gory than it does now. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna use oak planks again. I'm realizing now I might have gone a bit overboard with all the different blocks that I'm using and the details, but that's kind of part of the fun of this challenge, right? I didn't want to make anything too basic, because then there'd be no point doing it in the first place. And luckily, all the walls on this part are the same size, which should make it a bit more easy. They're all 3 blocks wide, so I can just replicate the same design around the whole thing. Okay, and then maybe we could use dirt as well. Yeah, I think this could actually work out quite nicely. So let's just expand this with dirt. I think that looks pretty good. I'm gonna add the roof on, I think, before I detail the walls. That way, if the roof kind of covers up some parts, it doesn't ruin it. So let's just mark out where we want the roof. I do think I'm gonna go with nether brick. We'll just use stairs again, maybe. I don't want to do anything fancy with the shaping. I want to keep it quite basic. And maybe we start it a bit lower down as well, which is why I want to build it now, so we don't accidentally build something here and then have to cover it up. I think maybe this kind of height. Yeah, something like that, I think, would work quite nicely. And then here it will just kind of carry along the front, and we'll have to carve this front part of the wall off. And then once we have the shape in, I might add a roof that comes out this way as well, just so that it's not one long roof. But for now, I'll just get the main shape in. And as there are no nether brick slabs, I can't do too much with the shaping, which is why I just want to keep it quite basic. There we go. So we have the outline in, and then to fill it in, I'm going to try and like add some kind of pattern. I don't know if I should use obsidian or black wool. I'm leaning towards the wool, I think. I think obsidian's just got a bit too much going on in the texture. But what I'm gonna do is just try and make like a tile shape. Like this. Yeah, it's just as like a small detail. Definitely not ideal to have wool on the roof. It's not really that nice of a block texture. I definitely use like concrete nowadays or terracotta, but that's not an option in this version. Yeah, I think that works quite nicely. Let me quickly have a quick sleep again though. And back to building. Yeah, this texturing design, like using a pattern on like the roof, is something you see quite a lot nowadays. I do this in all my builds, but back in early Minecraft, this wasn't a thing at all. People would just use one block for the roof. Or at least if they added other blocks, they'd probably use like a splatter method rather than like a pattern, which I love using patterns in my builds. Now that that's all in place, I think I might use some stairs to just add a bit more shaping. Just to make these look more like tiles. Let's see how this looks quickly, and then if it looks good, we'll do it on all the rest of the tiles too. I think that looks quite nice. I'm just gonna do it everywhere, because why not? Even though this might not be the best looking build ever, I'm really enjoying building with such limited blocks. I think one issue that modern Minecraft has is that there's just so many blocks now, that there's a perfect block for absolutely everything you need, which isn't like a bad thing, but it does sometimes make building just feel a bit less creative, but actually having to think this hard about what blocks to use is a really fun change. In fact, I might try and experiment with a different shape for this roof. We could have a bit of a sharper gradient, which would just make it feel a bit more unique to the rest. But this part I probably won't even replicate on the other side. Just over each side looks a bit unique to the other. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. And then we can do something different with this part too. And I'm thinking in this part, we can maybe have like a small garden area where the door is just a bit further back, and then we can have like a balcony out here. So like you can get a bit of fresh air outside without it being like a proper outdoor section. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. I am gonna quickly sleep though. 1 minute, where's the bed again? I should really just leave it here because I can never find it in the menu. No, never mind. Looking at this again, now that it's like bright outside, I really don't like this. I'm gonna delete this. See, this is why I don't like building when it's dark. I do like having this bit that juts out, but I think what I'm gonna do instead is extend it outwards a bit. Yeah, I think that looks fine. I might even just add a gate here, just to add a bit more shaping. Okay, I think that looks nice. It's a nice change, because if not, the roof would just kind of be a bit boring. I think that looks good. As for over here, I think I'm just gonna expand this part upwards, all of these walls. Looking back at this, I really love this window over here. Yeah, and then let's just carve in some windows. I hate to make them the same shape as these ones, but there's not really much else I can do. And then for over here, I'm gonna make some much bigger windows. I do think we could do a bit more shaping though. It's just really difficult without slabs, because I would normally turn these into slabs, I think. Or I would place like, that could work. Ideally, I'd want these to be facing downwards, so it makes more of like an arch shape. I could do that to help frame these windows off. I actually think that looks quite nice, actually. Oh, I quite like that. I might even expand the windows up. I know I said I was going to make these ones smaller than below. But I think that just utilizes the shape a bit better. Compare this side to that side, that definitely looks a lot nicer. In fact, I can probably, now that I've made these taller, I can probably add the mycelium. Yeah, I think that actually looks really cool. I could even add some fences there. Oh, that looks really nice, actually. The roof looks like it's actually built now for the building. Like, it slots on perfectly. I am curious on if I just expand this bit down a bit. Yeah, I love the idea of like the roof curving around on the edges. I probably should have just made a build that's not symmetrical, because if I'm having to do it all manually anyway, there's no point having it be this symmetrical. Oh, and I forgot we can add signs as well. That's what I was thinking. So I think if we use them, we can just divide this texture a bit so that under the window it looks nice and grey, and then it blends in nicely with the dirt. I think that's just like a nice small detail. I'm not actually going to write anything on the signs. I think they just look nice. Yeah, you can barely notice them really, but they're definitely just a detail that goes a long way without you even realizing they're there. And then we could probably just add some on this side as well. I wish I thought about using signs earlier, as I think they could have really helped out with earlier stages of the build. I'm tempted to go back and add some, but I don't want to add too much detail to the build now, because there's definitely already quite a lot going on. The only part I might go back and add some to is just down here. I think my least favorite part of the build right now is this layer of logs, like this double layer, as it's just quite thick. I want to maybe add some signs to just break it up a tiny bit. Yeah, I feel like that just helps to add so much detail, and it just makes it look less loggy, as it definitely were too many logs. Now that those are there, I can kind of see that. I think that might be too much detailing on the roof. But now that we have basically the building done, I think all we got to do is add in a few small extras, which would be a chimney at the back and then a front door. So I'm thinking the door would be over here and then the chimney will kind of just sprout out from the back of the build, like over here. So let's do the chimney first and then we'll do the front door. And instead of just having it come out the roof, I'd quite like to actually build it into the side of the building. But yeah, I kind of want this chimney to be a lot bigger than it actually has to be, just to like really make it stand out. And it's because it's such a big house, I feel like it needs a big like rustic chimney. Oh, mossy cobblestone looks so different in this version. I actually really like this old texture of it. Pretty much every block that I've used so far that's got like a different texture now, I definitely prefer the new version, apart from mossy cobblestone. I actually think this looks so much more fresh. And just because it's more green, this could be so much more useful for building. I'm not going to be able to do much shaping wise with the top of the chimney, just because of the limit with the slabs and stuff. But I think I just want it to look like quite a messy, rustic chimney up here. Then I'm going to use netherrack. I'm pretty sure that's like one of the only blocks fire will stay on. And then we'll get our flint and steel. Hopefully the house doesn't burn down. I'm actually really nervous now, but I don't think there's any way it would. I guess we'll find out. Yeah, that is a really, really chunky chimney, but I think it looks quite nice. I think it suits the build. Now that we have a chimney, let's just add in a front door and then maybe do a tiny bit of landscaping, but I don't think I'm going to do much. We can maybe have the doorway over here and then I'll just quickly get rid of this window. It's a bit pointless to be there. That I think works fine as an entrance. It's nothing too special, but it doesn't really need to be. I'm just gonna have one last sleep and then we can have a look at it so far and then maybe do some landscaping. I am thinking that I'm probably gonna do the interior in like a short or something or just a separate video, just because I have spent so much longer on this than I realized it would take. Originally, I was gonna make quite a basic house, but I've definitely gotten carried away with it so far. But it's just been really fun to build with such a challenging palette. Like I love like the new shelves and everything, but there's just so many blocks to choose now. But what I am gonna do is quickly build a tree. I might make a pathway leading up to it as well, and just add a farm or something. I'm just gonna try and tie it together really quickly. Okay, so I've just gone around and added like some decorations to the area, which really tie this together quite nicely. So I've added this pathway, which honestly looks like something I'd still make today, even with, you know, just the same blocks. The only issue I found is not being able to place buttons on the ground. I forgot you could only place them on the wall in this version, so I couldn't add like small pebbles. But trapdoors did the job just fine to look like bits of stone on the ground. And I love how this path looks. And then I also added in a small farm over here, which was really nice to build as bone meal just instantly grows plants, which honestly I think should just be a feature in creative mode. And then I added this small lake around the back of the house, which looks really nice. Water was actually a lot easier to control in this version. Now it was surprising to me because the trees, I mean, they look awful, but the reason they look awful isn't because of the version. I'm just not good at making trees. They were just kind of exactly the same to make. The only main difference is that every type of leaf is just named leaves. There's like no differentiation, but I've used birch just to try and mix it up a bit from this, especially because you can't place logs sideways. That way you wouldn't have to see the texture of the inside, rather than for like an oak tree, the branches would have looked a bit odd. And then the last thing I did as well, I added in some rocks, lots of grass around as you can see, and I also added some leaves growing up the chimney, which I think really helps just make it look less big, and to just make it stand out a bit less. It blends in a lot nicer now. But all in all, I'm really happy with this house. Like I said, I don't think this would look good like if someone made it today. Like to normal standards, it's not a good house, but for 1.0 Minecraft, I am really, really happy with how this turned out. But please make sure to let me know what you think of it in the comments, and if you'd like to see me add some interior to it or build something else in this version. I'd really like to try and make a castle or something, so let me know if you'd like to see that. I'm trying to reach 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and we're quite far off still in the years coming close to ending, so please consider subscribing. Thank you for watching, I'll see you soon. Goodbye.